Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining virtually for this event um, with Forbes Library. My name is Priya. I am the head of adult services here, and I organize our adult programming. We're really excited to partner with I Am ALS to do this awareness event that will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel afterward. So if you are watching a bit of this and need to leave early, or if you pop in late, you will be able to view the full recording in a few days once we get it up. I really want to thank Christina Johnson with I Am ALS for coordinating this event and connecting our panelists with Forbes Library. We're really excited to hear their stories and ask all of the questions and do some good learning together. Just a little bit of Zoom housekeeping for those of you who have used Zoom in the past. This may sound familiar. I have our main speakers spotlighted on our screen, so you should see five total and four once I dip out after this introduction. There is a chat function in the bottom row of controls for your Zoom. Please do put your questions or comments or thoughts in that chat box. See someone popping in the waiting room. Awesome. Any questions are good. We will look at them throughout the program and toward the end. So please do just put your best thoughts in there. Our panelists are open to answering any type of question. If you have any access issues, please message me directly. That'll be Forbes Library under the name there, and I'm happy to answer any questions or try to do some Zoom troubleshooting. You can toggle on and off captions for the speech that is spoken on this event. There should be a caption section on your bottom row of controls where you can turn that on and off, and the same with your camera on and off as well. Bottom row there. Please note we are recording, as I mentioned before. Just the video will be present, not the chat in the recording, but just so you're aware. If there are any questions either about the Zoom event itself or questions for the panelists, please pop those in the chat and we will get to those as soon as we can. And with that, that's all I have to say. So I'm going to pass it on to our moderator, Tim Abeska, to get us started. Thank you.
Thank you very much and good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Abeska. I am a volunteer advocate with an organization called I Am ALS, which is the largest patient-led ALS advocacy movement in the country that's built by and for the community of us who are affected by this disease. I lost my wife to ALS 6.5 years ago. With me are three of my volunteer colleagues that I'm going to ask to introduce themselves. All three of them are living with ALS. Then I'm going to take you through a very brief PowerPoint to orient you to what the disease is and then get to questions from our panelists. So I will start with Deb Winters, if you could introduce yourself.
I think I can. That's an easy question. Hi, I'm Deb Winters, and I live during the summer months in Huntington, West Virginia. I have been blessed to be able to snowbird to Arizona in the winter and to be there with my 90-year-old parents. I was diagnosed with ALS in March of 2022. So I've been living with this since then, just over 3 years. I am still able to talk and eat. My arms don't work. And I am thrilled to be able to help people understand what it's like to live with ALS and share our stories. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Deb. Charlie, I know you've probably got a introduction teed up using your assistive technology.
Hi everyone, my name is Charlie, and I was diagnosed with ALS 10 years ago. I've been trached, vented, and paralyzed for 7 of those years. Before ALS, I was a heavy-duty mechanic, and a part-time musician. My progression started in my hands and arms. I use an eye gaze device to communicate, which opens up a whole new world. I enjoy interacting with others, and making new friends. I'm glad to see everyone, and to be here.
Thanks, Charlie. And then Chris, could you introduce yourself, please? Oh, I think Chris is frozen. We're going to come back to him, and I will walk you through the PowerPoint that I referenced. This is to give you a brief orientation to what ALS is, how it's diagnosed, um, the different types of the disease, some of which is genetic, some of which is most of which is random, what limited treatments are out there, and how people living with the disease um, adjust their lives to what they're faced with. ALS is an acronym for Amyotrophic Lateral Sclerosis. In Europe, it's called motor neuron disease. What happens is that the muscles gradually weaken, start to twitch and waste away, and it's because the brain is losing its ability to send messages through neurons to give the muscles instructions about movement and so forth. Things kind of switch off like a night watchman at a factory, turning off the lights. And it's a very gradual process. There are no known cures or treatment, but every 90 minutes, statistically, someone is diagnosed with the disease. At any given time, 6,000 or more Americans are diagnosed in a year, and at any given time, 30,000 plus are living with the disease. And you may think if 6,000 are diagnosed a year, why is there only 30? It's because the average life expectancy after diagnosis is 2 to 5 years. So Charlie is affecting that curve, as are others. Um, there is a myth that ALS is an old white man's disease, which is not true. It affects people of all races, all genders. Uh, Military veterans are at least twice as likely to get ALS as compared to the general public who didn't serve in the military. And about 35% of people with the disease also experience cognitive or behavioral impairment, which is called frontotemporal dementia. Um, Nobody knows what exactly causes the disease. Um, Researchers are looking at environmental and genetic causes. It may be a combination of both. But what the early symptoms are, if it begins in the limbs, it's called limb onset, where you have muscle weakness, which gradually spreads. If it begins with speech and swallowing, the person has what we call bulbar onset, which means it's going to be the speech that goes first. You will have difficulty chewing or swallowing. You'll produce way too much saliva, which needs to be suctioned. And then the disease will gradually progress. Um, Here's one example of a diagnosis story where Beth had a slight tremor in her hand and a few odd falls. Things get a little bit worse. She's diagnosed with carpal tunnel. She has carpal tunnel surgery. Then she's diagnosed with cervical stenosis. She has neck surgery, yet her hand continues to weaken. She experiences drop foot, which affects the way you walk. And finally, Beth and her husband, one of our volunteers, Bob, independently saw a neurologist who brought up ALS within the first 15 minutes of seeing Beth and made the diagnosis in less than 4 hours. But unfortunately, that was too late for Beth because she had progressed so far. It was too late for her to join a clinical trial where there's only a slim window of opportunity. She also, as noted, experienced two unnecessary surgery. ALS progresses, as you can see, through the early stages of muscle weakening, cramping, fatigue, poor balance, and speech, into the middle stages. Some muscles are paralyzed, there's more weakness, there's breathing issues, sometimes bouts of uncontrollable laughter or crying, and in the later stages, paralysis, extremely limited movement. As Charlie said, he's been trached and vented, its inability to breathe without assistance. For every 10 people diagnosed with ALS, 50% will unfortunately die within 3 years, 90% within 5 years, and some will live, 10% will live more than 10 years potentially. 10 to 15% of the cases are genetic. It's a genetic defect that is carried from generation to generation. And you can see on the right side of this slide, a family that's lost multiple members to ALS, and this is what they call appropriately generational trauma. When it's not genetic, it's called random ALS. The treatment situation is frankly not great. The disease was first identified all the way back in 1869. Lou Gehrig, who the disease is typically named for because he was one of the most famous people who struggled with it, died in 1941, and you have to go all the way to 1995 before the introduction of a drug called riluzole, which just prolongs survival for a few months. Same thing with a drug introduced in 2017 called edaravone. Relyvrio was a drug in the early 2020s that appeared to show great promise and helped slow progression, but it was pulled from the market after the results of clinical trials. And there's one more drug that is showing promise, but it's limited to one specific genetic defect. So again, as I said earlier, there is currently no cure for this disease, and the best that drugs can do is slow its progression and increase survival by just a few months. Having said all that, there are people in our community who live with hope. Lori Carey has lived with this disease for over 20 years and has a podcast, and she's had over 105 episodes. Andrea Lytle Pete has done marathons on that bike that you can see her on in all 50 states. Mary Grace Porter was a gold medal winner in the 2025 Invictus Games. And Dr. Richard Bedlack is from Duke University. He is a fantastic doctor, pioneer in research, pioneer in patient treatment, and gives his patients hope. So with that, we're going to talk to the panelists about their experiences. And as Priya said, we welcome questions in the chat, and nothing is off limits. We are all open books. But Chris, you had froze earlier, so before the questions, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and then walk us through your diagnosis path.
Right. My name is Chris Spalding. I was diagnosed with ALS in, here. I was, my path of, I live in Spring, Texas, just outside of Houston. My path of diagnosis was in March of last year. I started noticing that I was having some weakness in my right hand, and I was getting ready for a knee replacement, left knee, arthritic knee, associated with basketball injuries when I was a kid. Was talking to my orthopedic surgeon, mentioned the weakness in my right hand. He said to me, "You get that checked out before we do anything." So went to my GP. He thinks I have a pinched nerve in my neck. He sends me off to get an MRI. It shows that I have the vertebrae in my neck starting to collapse, with some spinal stenosis going on in my neck. He sends me to an orthopedic back surgeon. They tell me, yeah, you've got vertebrae that are collapsing, some stenosis going on. We're going to do a cervical decompression operation, which is one of the surgeries that Beth went through, Tim, that you mentioned. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Okay, well, we could hear you fine. Chris is obviously having some connectivity issues. But Deb, could you walk us through your diagnosis? Because I know everybody here on the panel has a different story, and I'd like the audience to hear everybody's.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I started with a few random falls while I was out walking, and I was having trouble with my hand as well. But when it got to the point where I could grasp a doorknob but not turn it, it became an issue that needed to be addressed. I had I went to the doctor. I was determined that I needed a shoulder replacement. And so in September of 2020, I had a total reverse shoulder replacement and obviously PT afterwards. I did PT 3 times a week. And by the end of the year, around Christmas, I was doing pretty good. I could get both hands over my head. In January, after the holidays, I went back and the physical therapist noticed changes. I had actually regressed to a point not expected just by having a week or two off. And so they changed my physical therapy to strengthen my right arm. They noticed there was definite changes in my hand, later identified as ALS hand. And by March, the insurance company had withdrawn approval for me to continue because the PT was no longer for a shoulder replacement. Working with that physical therapist, my primary care doctor, I had an EMG that immediately said, nope, you don't have carpal tunnel, but all the nerves in your arm are not good. Okay. MRI showed excuse me, an anomaly on my C7, said, the radiologist noted that the diagnosis of exclusion was metastatic myeloma. I went through a bunch of cancer screenings and was determined not to have cancer. Ended up finally getting referred to a neurosurgeon who said to me, you don't need me. There's nothing I can do to help you, but I do believe that you have ALS, or you may have it. And he referred me to a neuromuscular neurologist, and he ran more tests and was overly cautious and started me on IVIG therapy, saying, if it's not ALS, this will help you, but it won't hurt in any case. After 3 months of IVIG therapy with no improvement, he called ALS and diagnosed it at that time.
Thank you for sharing your story, Deb. And I'm glad you mentioned the concept of diagnosis of exclusion, because I'd like the audience to know there is no definitive test for this. What Deb was saying, the EMG Deb referred to, measures the connectivity of the nerves. My wife had 3 of those tests before ultimately being diagnosed. One of the doctors described it as a test to check to see where the squirrels have been chewing on the power lines. Charlie, can you walk us through your diagnosis path?
As a heavy-duty mechanic, I first noticed something was wrong when I struggled to hold a heavy tool upright due to its weight. I took note of the issue but continued working. About a week later, I was transferring to an offshore drilling rig off the coast of Santa Barbara. The transfer involves swinging on a rope from the boat to the rig. I slipped on the rope and landed on my backside during this transfer. At that moment, I realized something was seriously wrong, and suspected I might have carpal tunnel syndrome. This was the beginning of my journey with ALS. Initially, I thought I had carpal tunnel syndrome, so I went to my general practitioner, who referred a neurosurgeon. During my appointment, my neurosurgeon noticed twitching in my hands, arms, and shoulders, and subsequently referred me to a neurologist. The neurologist performed an EMG test, which stands for electromyography test. This test measures muscle response, or electrical activity using small needle probes through the skin into the muscles, in response to nerve stimulation, helping to detect neuromuscular abnormalities. After the EMG, the neurologist conducted strength tests, including walking in a straight line. Following these assessments, he sat me down to share the results. The good news was that I didn't have carpal tunnel. The bad news was that I had amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Because of the progression of my condition, I was told that I only had a few years left to live, and to get my affairs in order. I was shocked, and unsure of what to do next. My neurologist explained that Medicare required additional testing to confirm his preliminary diagnosis. He referred several specialists for further evaluation. During my ordeal, I had 2 MRIs, which this imaging technique creates detailed images, assisting in diagnosing and monitoring various conditions, including ALS. I saw numerous doctors, and after completing all the tests, my neurologist gave me his official diagnosis of ALS. He strongly recommended that I visit the ALS clinic at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Clinics are a comprehensive facility for all ALS-related needs, where you can see various ALS doctors and specialists under one roof. They have experience in obtaining ALS equipment and navigating the necessary steps. I was fortunate that it only took 6 months to receive my official diagnosis. Many people wait up to a year. My doctors had personal experience with ALS, and recognized the urgency of addressing my diagnosis. As for misdiagnosis, my neurosurgeon followed the appropriate steps, and referred me to a neurologist without jumping to conclusions.
Thank you, Charlie. Chris, I see you made it back in.
Yeah, I lost
Maybe,
internet.
yeah, maybe you. So let's pick up with your. I think where you were. You were.
Where did you hear to?
I think you talked about having the same kind of surgery as Beth
Correct.
experienced, and then
So
you were on that
I
path.
had an orthopedic back surgeon who said, "Hey, with the cervical decompression, don't worry, routine for us. We do it all the time, and you're just getting old." Um, Fortunately, I have a son who's who's a nurse practitioner, and he said, "Dad, you probably don't have it, but you need to have him checked with ALS." They sent me off to. I asked a question, and they said, "Yeah, we do need to double check that." They sent me off to a neurologist. He did all sorts of testing, strength testing, EMG nerve testing, myelogram, spinal tap, so on and so forth. He comes back to me and says, Chris, everything's normal. And I went, oh, great, everything's normal. And he said, no, you don't get it. With ALS, we have no biomarkers that tells us something's wrong. We've eliminated everything else. This now raises the risk that you have ALS. He said to me, you're going to have that neck surgery. Won't do a damn thing for you. He sent me off to Dr. Stanley Appel at the Houston Methodist Neurological Institute, who is an icon in the neurology world. He's been doing ALS he's like 93 years old. He does some additional testing, and sure enough, he tells me the three worst words you can ever hear: you have ALS. And it was particularly hard because my wife was sitting next to me when they gave me the diagnosis. My wife is from Argentina, and her father lived with ALS for 30 years and died of ALS. So it was particularly hard for my wife to hear that because, she had seen ALS up front, and close.
Thank
So
you for
that's
sharing.
the story.
Thank you for sharing that, Chris. Deb, what loss has been the most difficult to cope with for you since your diagnosis?
Independence, to just use a word to drill down. And I mean, for someone who was called fiercely independent, to get to a point where I am completely dependent, because my arms don't work. I can't cut my own food. Some days, good days, depending on the food, I can feed myself. Other days, I have an assistive device that literally feeds me, or my family feeds me. I haven't driven for a year. I need help to get in and out of bed. I need help to get in and out of a chair. I need help to get dressed. I can't brush my own hair. I've hung on to the toothbrush. I can still brush my own teeth. That feels like a big deal to me. But that to go from independent to dependent is an incredibly difficult journey. And unfortunately or fortunately, my brain still works. It hasn't slowed down one iota. And so the people around me get to be the beneficiaries of someone who sits in a chair and thinks about all the stuff that needs to get done. We'll just leave it at that.
Charlie, can you walk us through a typical day for you?
When I wake up in the morning, I have problems with my eyes, so my wife cleans them and applies special eye drops. Once my eyes regain functionality, I check my email and social media. I have 2 cups of coffee and formula down my feeding tube, then I'm ready for the day. My day may include ALS Zoom meetings, or helping others with this disease. I still get out and do activities. I might go to a restaurant or the movies. Sometimes, it may be attending a family, friend event, or a doctor's appointment. If I'm home, I watch YouTube videos, or do finances. I'll watch TV shows, and maybe a movie. I go to bed late due to my active household. That's generally my day.
Thanks, Charlie. Chris, where are you at in terms of progression and symptoms?
So I had limb onset. And so my right arm and right hand now are essentially useless. Um, it is starting to affect my speech. I don't think I'm slurring my words, but I am having to speak much slower in order to ensure that I I pronounce my words correctly. I have to sleep with a special ventilator that's it's called an AVAP, which is different from the common CPAP. The ventilator that I have gives me a certain pressure to ensure I get a good breath of air, and it releases the pressure and allows me to exhale very good. And the pulmonologist told me that this will slow the decline in the muscles that control breathing. They think I have a reasonable chance of slower than normal or typical ALS progression, but when I say, well, what's that mean? I get, well, we really can't tell you. I am in a clinical trial, and I've had 4 infusions. I have to get an infusion once a month. At the last infusion, the neurologist told me, you're progressing slower than what I would expect or what is typical. I can't tell you if that's the drug because I don't even know if you're getting the drug. You may be getting the placebo. Or is it your ALS? Or is it both? So I'm still pretty in. I still can drive. I still feed myself. I can swallow good. I get around, but there's a lot of things that I no longer do that I miss.
And Deb, what do you rely on? You touched on it a little bit for tools or technology to help you.
Well, I sit in a $30,000 power wheelchair. That helps a lot. I still can't beat Juan in a race, but I can I can go faster than most people can walk. So I like that part. Obi, Mr. Obi, it's O period B period I period is an device that has 4 bowls in it and a arm that is teachable. So it knows how tall I am. And I have 2 small buttons that if I touch one, it gets a spoonful of food out of a bowl and brings it over to my mouth for me to eat. If I touch the other one, it moves from one bowl to the other. So I don't have to eat all the same stuff. And just when it became obvious that my left arm was starting to not be as strong as it had been, I asked my neurologist during a clinic, I said, does that mean when I can't feed myself, will I need to get a feeding tube? And I love this man. He says, no. I said, what do you mean, no? What do you, I can't feed myself. He said, well, are you having trouble swallowing or eating? I said, no, I eat just fine. I eat anything I want whenever I want. He said, most people, when they can't feed themselves, have their family feed them. And I said, have you met my husband? And we all laughed because, please understand, my husband is an incredible, caring, compassionate caregiver. He takes incredibly good care of me, but he gets distracted. And so I could be halfway through lunch and he'd get a phone call and come back in an hour. So I use Obi, I use my family, and it helps.
Charlie, I know that many people, including you, with ALS, find ways to live meaningful and purposeful lives despite the challenges presented by the disease. How do you do that?
My diagnosis of ALS brought a multitude of challenges. However, the most heart-wrenching experience was with my children. My 3 daughters, instead of embracing their roles with my ALS, chose to distance themselves from my journey. Similarly, my 3 stepchildren felt that my ALS had taken their mother away from them, and they harbored deep resentment towards me. As a result, basically, my wife and I lost our children during their crucial formative years. Even after all these years, our relationship remains strained. I keep busy with my ALS, and helping others gives me purpose. 10 years ago, I was a heavy-duty mechanic. Now, I'm answering questions for a university, alongside students and doctors. I've spoken at several colleges, including Duke University. I've also been featured in my local news for ALS advocacy. Additionally, I appeared in a PBS documentary titled, Matter of Mind, My ALS, which is available on Amazon Prime and Apple TV. I never would have imagined being in a national documentary. While I may not be able to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for ALS, I can raise awareness and support others affected by this devastating disease.
Thank you, Charlie. And I appreciate you sharing the difficulty with the family dynamic um, as a result of the disease. Chris, what are you doing to proactively plan for your progression?
Well, look, the first thing that they say to you, it seems like, get your papers in order. Make sure that, your wishes are understood and well documented, um, for when the inevitable happens and you pass away. So that's the first thing that you do. I'm early in the progression, but I'm doing things like, okay, we need to start planning for the fact that at some point in time, I'm going to need a wheelchair. As Deb talked about, these are $30,000 events. I am doing a lot of voice banking, and I set up an account with an organization called Bridging Voice, and through Bridging Voice, I got an account with an organization called 11 Labs. From recordings of my voice, they have generated already an AI clone of my voice. So when I anticipate that I will lose the ability to speak, I will be able to type into a computer things that I want to say, and the clone of my voice will say what I've typed in my voice. And I must say that the replication of my voice through this AI generated replication is quite amazing. So I'm, planning for that. The other thing is, what is quite good about this is that this program or this clone of my voice, I will be able to type things in Spanish and it will say the words in Spanish for me, and it with my typical American accent that my wife and her family make a lot of fun about. So, those are the sorts of things, things like thinking about, I'm using my iPhone now, using Siri, learning how to answer and hang up the phone with, these are the simple things that I'm trying to do to get ready for when, my independence becomes very, very limited. I think the thing that I fear most is not being able to express my, that to me I find to be a difficult thought.
But we hear Charlie is able to do that. And Charlie, I don't know if you see in the chat, Aaron's asking, how long have you been using AAC to communicate? And I don't know whether you need time to tee up an answer for that. So just wanted to point it out to you, and I'm going to come back to you because I want to talk to Deb about what's new in your life since ALS that brings you joy.
New in my life, I started a nonprofit foundation to help others living with ALS. West Virginia is underserved in the ALS world. And so Deba's Hope for Tomorrow. Deba is what one of my grandchildren called me. And so Deba, and actually lots of people are now calling me Deba, that's okay with me. Deba's Hope for Tomorrow has 2 events a year, and one of the ones that we're just thrilled with is we just had it last week is the empathy dinner. And the empathy dinner is an evening where people come and they get to experience one of the symptoms, one of the disabilities of ALS during dinner. And then we talk about it. How did that make you feel? And what are you going to do different tomorrow that now that you've had this experience? And I just have to say, and Charlie mentioned it as well, having a purpose, staying active, living life abundantly, that is life to me. And so being able to share that and to as these guys will tell you, I jumped out of an airplane just to prove that you don't have to go home and die when someone tells you you have ALS.
In the chat, Charlie says, I've been using eye gaze communication for 9 years. I have quick progression. There's a good question in the chat, which Charlie may want to tee up an answer for, but Deb, I'll come to you. Has it been a constant challenge to get the medical care and any assistance you've needed since your diagnosis?
I'm blessed. I was familiar in the medical community here in Huntington from my previous employment. I live 3 miles from the ALS clinic that I attend. I already lived in a single floor plan home. And so once I finally got the diagnosis, then it has not been a challenge. I have the staff at my ALS clinic and the people who volunteer there every month are incredible. In fact, the OB that I use is a loaner from another ALS organization that I can keep until I don't need it. So,
and Chris, what about you? Are you getting the care you need, or do you face challenges?
Well, I face challenges. I'm very fortunate in that one of the advantages of being here in Houston is the Houston medical facilities at the medical center are some of the most extensive in the world. But to give you a quick story, when I was diagnosed, my neurologist said to me, we're going to put you on riluzole for 30 days. And after 30 days, we're going to try and get you on Radicava, which is a relatively new drug. Tim, you referred to it. I think it's called Edaravone. And they said to me, you will have trouble. We will have trouble getting coverage for that drug for your insurance from your insurance company. Sure enough, after 30 days, we start the process. I was denied the coverage once, then it was appealed. That was denied. I appealed it to an outside panel that Medicare. That was denied. And when I found out why they were denying me, it frankly really, really irritated me. They said to me, your ALS has progressed to my insurance company said that where the drug will not do you in. And I said, well, hang on a second here. I haven't lost any daily living activity ability. What are you knocking me down on? And they wouldn't tell me. And my doctor told me, Chris, they're saying because you use the handrail when you go up and down stairs, they're saying that means you need assistance to go up and down stairs. Therefore, they're asserting that you have lost the ability of daily normal activity for going up and down stairs. And I said, well, yeah, right. I mean, millions of people are using the handrail every day because it's a smart thing to do. I took my case to an administrative law judge, and fought it out against my insurance company there. And after 2 months, I prevailed against my insurance company. When the absurdity of what they were saying, trying to deny me coverage for a drug, Radicava costs $18,000 a month. So, yeah, and so after that, Tim, if I could say, I said, well, I'm going to throw myself into the advocacy space and have been doing, I think, quite a bit of work in ALS advocacy. But did I have some problems getting some care? Well, getting the drug was a real issue that I faced, and they're doing that to routinely. The insurance companies are to get out of coverage for Radicava and also durable medical equipment for people who are dealing with ALS.
In the chat, Charlie says, I've been lucky with Medicare and California's version of Medicaid, and California has a few loopholes for care. Christina says, I will say it was extremely hard getting medical care and assistance for my dad here in Western Massachusetts. Charlie, we're coming up on the top of the hour. What is the one piece of advice that you would like to give to our audience? And then I'm going to ask Deb and Chris to do the same.
A critical piece of advice is that no two cases of ALS are the same. Each individual experiences different paths and types of progression. Medical professionals must listen to their patients. Unlike many other diseases, people with ALS are often aware of their bodies and can articulate what they are experiencing, so it is essential to pay attention to their insights. Living with ALS requires support from friends, family, and healthcare providers. With this support, individuals with ALS can maintain a good quality of life.
Thank you. And Deb, what is your one piece of advice for the audience?
Plan ahead. One of the things that has been said to us over and over again is make sure you get what you need or start to get what you need before you need it. And so we have worked diligently to be proactive with what we see coming and how we can plan to be prepared when I do need it, even if I don't need it now.
And Chris, your piece of advice for the audience.
So I'll answer this in two steps. From time to time, I kind of get down, which is normal. A few weeks ago, I started thinking that my left hand was starting to weaken. And I said to my wife, hey, my left hand is going downhill. This is going to get bad. My right hand and right arm, are useless. And my wife said to me, Chris, let's not worry about what's going to happen. Let's deal with let's deal with right now. Let's deal with today. We'll worry about tomorrow tomorrow. The second way I want to answer this is there's a nurse in Australia by the name of Bronnie Ware, and she did a lot of work with people in palliative care at the end of their life. She wrote a book about the common things that she noticed that those people all said at the end of their life. And she said, the one most common thing, she said, that people said, I wish I had let myself be happy in my life. That, she said, people came to realize that being happy is a choice that you could make in the piece of advice that I give to my kids and everyone I can. Make the choice
Thank you,
to
Chris.
be happy. I'm sorry.
Nope, no apologies here. You know that. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank the audience. I see some nice comments in the chat for the panelists. So thank you very much for that. Priya, thank you for hosting us. It doesn't look like we have any more audience questions.
I'm sorry.
Absolutely no apology needed, Chris.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining today. I worked with Priya at Forbes to have this event, and with the goal of educating more people and you know get learning, having people learn more about this horrendous disease. But thank you so much for everyone that attended, and thank you, a special thank you to all of our panelists and our moderator, Tim. It was an honor to hear your stories, and I really, really appreciate it.
I want to say thank you to all the people who sat in on this to learn.
One of the things IMALS does is raise awareness about this disease. And so that's what we did tonight for all of you. So we, again, really appreciate you joining our panel tonight.
Thanks very much, everyone. We will have this recording posted on our YouTube channel in a couple of days, and I'll be sure to share that through our public YouTube and also with Christina so she can share that with our panelists. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.